Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for coming to have a little chat about Capability Brown at Belvoir. So November, for me, marks the height of autumn. England, I believe, is at one of its heights in colour. We've all had a good harvest, hopefully, and we're looking forward to a festive season ahead of us. It's a great honour and privilege, ladies and gentlemen, to be with you today and talk to you about my home. My name is Emma, and I'm the 11th Duchess of Rutland. And I live in this beautiful, here I am on Bonnie. This is one of our beautiful hunters. She's got what they call the mark of the prophet on her neck, which apparently is meant to mean she's very lucky. But that rather extraordinary outfit that I'm wearing is because I was emulating one of my previous ancestors who was the one that instigated the building of the castle. So just for a moment, I'll take you for a quick, brief tour around my home, Belvoir. Here we have the castle. So it was the architect of this castle was James Wyatt, and it has over 130 rooms in it. It's got about 2 acres of roof. A lot of it is lead. First of all, just that big black door on the left leads you into the front of the castle. So if I take you into the guard room, you see this is the room that you enter as you go into the castle. And if I can explain to you, ladies and gentlemen, that behind every sword and every gun, we had our own private army. So that was very real. Although this is really a showpiece castle, and it was never built to be a fortified site, it is obviously the site of the 4th castle on the same earth. So the family arrived here in 1066, and they had many of the homes before had been destroyed, and then along came this rather headstrong duchess that decided she wanted to build a castle that would be the very one that Walt Disney chose. He came from just down the road near Lincoln, and as a little boy he was taken to see Belvoir Castle, and he's the one that decided it was going to be the Walt Disney look-alike. So Belvoir's the reason for Walt Disney's castle. So as I take you into the castle, if I may, we go into the Regents Gallery. This room's 130 metres long. In the old days, women would have promenaded down the length of this room. Really, that was their exercise. They didn't ever want their skin to turn more than white. But nowadays, we use it for concerts, for events. We have a lot of CLA cocktail parties, a lot of charity events here, and weddings, of course. We have a huge amount of weddings, about 70 a year. This is the state dining room. Every room at Belvoir has a different theme. And I think for me, this room is really special because it's very Norman in its feel. My father-in-law, who's a great friend of Belvoir Castle, used to sit at this table just here at the end and say to very boring, rather dull, fat, ugly women sitting on his left and right, if you study the ceiling, I'm sure you'll find 2 rosettes that might be the same. He well knew they were all different, but at least it kept them off his shoulders for a few hours, and he could get on with eating his dinner. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, this room is going to be sat around by a group of shooting party. We have about 130 let shoots a year, all shooting small amount of birds, and the group will be sitting around this table enjoying it as their own home. And that's really what I wanted to bring to Belvoir. I wanted to bring it alive with making every room work. So every one of those flowers, by the way, is not real. I believe in being economic. So everything is silk. So I know some people say that's very naff, but I've got a castle to fill. So moving on here, so these rooms are called the estate bedrooms. So if a member of the royal family comes to stay, they stay in this suite of rooms. And When I moved to the castle in 2001, we realised that these rooms were out of action because the bedspread that was on this bed was so fragile it couldn't be used. So all the time there's a reason why you can't do something. And my philosophy in life is there's no such word as can't. I will make it work. I will find a way. So this is an Indian sari that I turned into a very grand looking bedspread. And our guests use the suite of royal rooms. There's a bathroom just over to the right there by the Chinese wallpaper. And in that bathroom, there was a great big scoop taken out of the side of the bathroom where one of the members of the royal family who used to stay there used to get his very voluptuous body down the corridor. I never asked which one, but it is there to this day. We move on to, this is we're very famous at Belvoir for our Chinese wallpaper. And one of the debates I have always with heritage is whether to replace or keep what's there. In this case, as you can see, I kept the old, but I've looked at restoring it over time. So moving on to another bedroom, and our guests are all staying in these rooms tonight, so they're very much used and living. Not one moment of this space at Belvoir isn't utilised. So in this room, I don't know if any of you saw that movie called Young Queen Victoria. Well, this is the bed that the film crew used and made, and luckily left behind, because this was on my list to do, in this room for that movie. So if you go back and watch it, you'll see, I think it was Emily Blunt that played the part of young. We've just, ladies and gentlemen, I think going live this week is The Crown. So The Crown have been filming with us for about 2 months, and Stately Homes love films of any description. As long as you tie them into a very strict, good contract, it's great revenue, and it's always what I call the icing on the cake. You never know it's coming, but it's wonderful if you get it. So next room around the castle, ladies and gentlemen, is duchesses. We are a little bit of an endangered species. I don't think there's more than 21 or 24 of us in the country. Like all endangered species, we have to be treated with great care. So I hope you're a good audience, because I'm not too used to talking to the NEC audience. So here we have Violet, the 8th Duchess, looking very precious in 1906. However, I'm really not a Duchess, and I never feel as if I am. My name's Emma, and my maiden name was Watkins. And I'm a farmer's daughter from the Welsh borders. So here I am as a brownie, and this is my precious pony, Betty. The Welsh borders is very different, perhaps, to living in a stately home. But the story I have to tell is most probably my own fairy tale. My mother and my dear father, who sadly left this earth last year. But life as a 21st century Duchess is very different to that of my predecessors. They would have swanned around, hosted society events, ridden to hounds. But for me, there is a business to run, and I'm the chief executive. We have 3,000 acres of forestry, 16,000 acres of farmland. We're farming 4,500 in hand. We farmed nothing when I arrived, as well as 4,000 acres of home farm and 100 members of staff. On top of that, I'm a mother of 5 children. That's most probably the most wearing of the whole lot combined. But as we know, we mothers, we have a job to do. And that's the particular case if you're a duchess. All parents, farming communities, like the rest of us, all want to hand what they have down to future generations. But with the business with being married to a duke means everything's inherited by the oldest son. People always query me on that and say, how does it feel? I said, well, it felt exactly the same being a farmer's daughter. I knew the boys would get it all. So the English peerage really isn't that dissimilar to farming families. Here's Violet, my oldest daughter. She just set up her own business. When we first moved into the castle, we had these horrendous guides everywhere, being very snooty. So I gave all the children water pistols, and I said, I suggest you go and shoot them. And when they're really soaking, they'll either stay or go. We did get rid of a lot of them that way. And Violet ran the ice cream shop. She's bought her own Mini. She's 24, wouldn't go to university. This seems to be something of our times. Decided she wanted to go straight to work. She creates a lot of storm, is always in the press, which drives me completely mad. She adores Instagram, which is another problem, but she's teaching me how it works. But last year, I'm proud to say, she took home 60 grand in her back pocket. So well done, Violet. So she's kicking on in life. Next daughter is Alice. So Alice is the one who's devoted to hunting. There's nothing that this girl won't do for a day out with a pack of hounds. She spends a lot of time over in Shropshire. She's also set her own business up. She'll dress you. So if you go to Selfridges, to the upmarket area, where you can spend a fortune on a frock, Alice will tell you what really suits you and what doesn't. And she also deals with a lot of wealthy individuals from around the world who come over, and she guides them. She writes a column in the Telegraph every Saturday about country style. So she's become a writer. She's 22. And then Eliza, she's my third daughter. She was the one that at 3 said, "Mummy, now we're rich, we live in a castle. Can I have a new bike?" I said, "It doesn't work like that, darling. You have to wait for your birthday or Christmas." So that cheeky monkey went to the front door of the castle with a rusty bucket. And as the Americans came out of the front door, they looked at this poor urchin and said, "Oh my God, gee, you're so cute. Can I take your picture?" She said, "It'll cost you £1." She bought that bike. But when you live in heritage, just as many of you guys who are here today, most probably, we share what we have with people. And so the journey of understanding that is very important. That's Eliza. She's the singer in the family. So moving on to, this is the chief brat, child number 5, Hugo. Poor Hugo. So when he said, "Mummy, when Charles dies, do I become the Duke?" I said, "You're never going to be the Duke. Get your head round it now." So what do I do? And he heard someone mentioning the word entrepreneur at about 5 and said, "I'm going to be an entrepreneur." So let's see. Watch this space. Maybe, maybe not. And then Charles, who is the Marquis of Granby. So Charles has just finished at Stowe, where he's been, and he's looking at doing a ski season. And he really struggles with the whole concept of being a Marquis. So he's he's just worked on the neighbouring farm for the whole summer, and I'd have to match whatever money he made, and I think he made 4,500, so it's a very expensive year for me. Now, if I may, I'll take you to the first night that we moved into the castle. And here it is at night. The children came screaming into our bedroom early that morning. "Mummy, Mummy, Mummy! The castle's flooding." It was, ladies and gentlemen. There was water streaming down through the library, all over the gilded furniture in the dining room. I took to the roof with a brolly, barber and wellies to see where the problem was. And most probably, the most satisfying job I've ever had at Belvoir was slipping down that roof on my posterior and dragging out 3 dead pigeons. If every problem was as simple as that, it would all be very easy, wouldn't it? The castle most probably had been sleeping for 70 to 80 years, and with it, the farms, the woods. And I was desperate to find a way to jig it up and get it moving. So I went along to this home, which I'm sure you know, in Derbyshire, and knocked on the front door and was met by a charming butler and taken to the top floor, where I met Her Grace, the Duchess of Devonshire, Debo. She was wonderful. She looked at me and she said, "Emma, you've got to start small. Just do the steps well and everything will unfold." I so remember on that very day, the late Duke turning to his wife and saying, "Have you told her, old girl, that you make the money and we spend it?" Well, that I've learned, but it was a great lesson to learn from a wonderful woman. So I guess you learn the hard way. You have to understand how it all works, what it's meant to people, and I found the best way for me to learn is by writing it down. So I've written a few books. The first was Belvoir Castle, 1,000 Years of Family, Art and Architecture. And then how to make the farm work, reorganising the 4,000 acres, refurbishing 350 homes, and then I developed the shoot, which is now one of the top 10 shoots in Britain, and we have about 30 to 40 nights of people staying in the castle, and I created another shooting lodge in the other part of the estate where we have about 50 groups staying a year there. That was all part of a second book called Shooting: A Season of Discovery. I did about 4,500 miles through the British Isles and found out about things that I had no idea to do with shooting. As a result, in February last year, we finished our first shooting season. But the talk on the gun bus had been slightly different. It hadn't been about the quality of the birds, but it had been about the changes that had been made at the castle. Why so much planting? Have you cut down a lot of trees? Is it our imagination or the lakes longer? Well, these are regular questions, but they've obviously not read my last book, Capability, Brown and Beaver. And this is really what I've come to talk to you about today.